Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. I like to talk about US history and I talk about international human rights law as well. Of course, I've been discussing recently the raging war in Iran since the decapitation of the Iranian leadership by the joint US Israeli action on February 28th, 2026. Now, so it's been over 3 weeks now, but that's not what I'm going to discuss today, right? Today, I'm going to talk about the bad faith, vindictive, malicious prosecution that I've been facing in Montgomery County, Maryland, since May 16, 2023, when police manufactured a swatting and raided me and assaulted me and shot me in the head. These are stitches from where they shot me with a projectile. I learned in the hospital that it was a taser dart. They brutalized me severely. I had pain all over my body and my jaw. When they removed me and they had released tear gas into my apartment, that's what I was told at the hospital, that it was tear gas and pepper spray, but it was some kind of toxic chemical that was released. It just bombed my apartment, exploded in my apartment, all sorts of fumes. And I was removed, handcuffed, naked, right? So that was a violation of 18 USC section 1801, a sort of a sexual assault. So they removed me, placed me in an ambulance, drugged me to knock me out, right? And then they dumped me in. So that's another assault, right? My family throughout this process did not know what was going on. In any event, after I was discharged from the hospital, because I was told my kidneys had been damaged from the tasering. I'd been tasered severely by multiple police officers, right? And I was dumped in a hospital. First of all, suburban hospital, then uh, MedStar Hospital. My family did not know where I was. My family's in Nigeria. My mother's alive. I have several siblings. One of my brothers is a professor, renowned professor and author. I have a brother who works with the federal government in Nigeria. I have a sibling, a younger sister who's a barrister at law. She's a lawyer. So I have several siblings. I have uncles. I have an uncle who chairs a leading investment firm in Nigeria, investment bank in Nigeria. I have several siblings, several relatives. So my late father was a bank chairman and CEO in Nigeria. So my family and I have lots of friends, right? Lots of friends that I'm in contact with. None of these people knew where I was. So I'd been kidnapped, right? Kidnapped under color of law by Maryland, Montgomery County. Montgomery County then fabricated information about me. They wrote all sorts of derogatory, disparaging, defamatory information about me. So they manufactured the charges, manufactured the incidents. The objective was to put me in a hospital and force me to take nostrums for an illness I don't have. An investigator would later tell me, this was a private investigator who had been an ex DOJ prosecutor and was ex military intelligence. He said, look, that it was with respect, it was all of that was orchestrated by Montgomery County police in order to help impede um, an ongoing federal government investigation of several people I had filed complaints against, legitimate complaints. It doesn't matter. There's a Whistleblower Protection Act that protects me, right? So that from retaliation. But in any event, um, this attorney, civil rights attorney, told me he told me this since 2023, right? End of 2023. He said, look, that this charges in Montgomery County are fake, right? And they filed them in order to block to discredit me and to block the EEOC investigations and proceedings that were ongoing and Office of Special Counsel proceedings and Inspector General proceedings. The Office of Inspector General, the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General, was investigating several people, some of them affiliated with Montgomery County, including a Jamie A. Simon for fraud that I'd filed a complaint against, right? Jamie A. Simon's father, according to what she told me, was a physician at NIH, right? National Institutes for Health or whatever it's called. So, and she's born and raised in Montgomery County, Maryland, just like Judge James Bonifant. So, a completely fabricated incident, fabricated emergency. Unfortunately, they used a man to impersonate himself as my uncle. That's Jide Wariri, the Howard University professor. So, the pretext for the police raiding me, according to the judge, it was about 40 cops. I was ambushed, locked in my apartment, falsely imprisoned. They blocked my door so I couldn't come out, blocked my people, used a drone to surveil me at the window, evacuated my building. Those that they didn't evacuate, they told them to stay indoors, not to come out. And what they told my neighbors was that there was a criminal holding a woman hostage in my apartment, that a criminal had escaped. So to scare them, to alarm them, I don't know if um, these cops or agents of the rogue DOD or whoever it was that staged or were involved in the whole raid. I don't know if they weren't intelligent enough to realize that I would have friends that I since I'd lived in that building for about 2 years, I probably had friends, and some of them because in this age of social media, advanced technology, smartphones, people would record what happened. So of course there was someone who lived on my floor, just a few doors from me, that I talked to regularly. Just a few days before, he had actually taken me to a restaurant, an African restaurant, to buy food. Right, I'm on good terms with him, and he recorded what happened. And he still couldn't believe that I was the one who was removed in that whole scenario, in that whole situation. He said he heard a gunshot, right? And he was told that it was a criminal. The criminal had been killed and they removed the person, right? So all of this was a work of fiction by Montgomery County Police. So they manufactured the police, the police, Montgomery County Police Department manufactured the crime, staged the false scene. Their objective was to remove me from my apartment. There are different reasons. That's not what I'm going to get into today. But the thing is, I'm entitled to a day of in court. So what happened, right? It's stuff that can happen in autocratic states, right? In America, the pretext they use to violate our rights is an emergency. So an emergency, or they'll say national security, an emergency. But an emergency is threat. So an emergency um, can't be perpetual, right? It can't be indefinite. An emergency, a term of emergency, a period of emergency cannot be perpetual, right? It would be temporary. Something, it has a definite uh, time frame, right? Because it's limited. You're violating the rights of American citizens. You're violating the Constitution, right? Because we are a nation of laws, right? And everybody's entitled to due process. So in an emergency, my due process rights were violated, right? And it can't be a fabricated emergency, right? But so Montgomery County Police fabricated an emergency. Now it's been 3 years. I haven't had my due process. It's been clear that the so-called emergency was fabricated, that the whole incident was fabricated. Typically, the sort of stuff that America does in emergencies, right, in trying to forestall an imminent threat, right, it is what is routine in authoritarian states, right? It was common practice in the USSR. At least that's what the propaganda in America tells us, right? And in the USSR, in autocratic states, dissidents are called, they're labeled crazy. They're crazy and dangerous. So they abduct them, right? Abduct them, put them in mental health institutions, and force treat them until they accept state propaganda, right? So this is what America is now trying to do. This is what Judge James Bonifant of Montgomery County, Maryland, has been superintending over, right? Fortunately, it's been 3 years. That has, I've maintained my dignity. I've maintained my stance, my constitutional rights. But Judge James Bonifant, his racism, it's abhorrent, and it impugns on our constitutional rights. Um, he has, done so many abusive things. That's Judge James Bonifant. He's done so many abusive things. So I'm not going to go into the details of what Montgomery County Police did because I've done videos explaining those things. But importantly, significantly, I have constitutional rights. And the role of the judge in our system, the judge is supposed to be neutral. This is a state incident, right? This is a case a case under the state of Maryland. It's not a federal case, right? So, but a judge from the state of Maryland still has a duty to uphold not only the Constitution of Maryland, but the Constitution of the United States as well. And so I have constitutional rights. They have to observe my Sixth Amendment rights, which is due process of, not just due process, right? We normally consider the 14th Amendment with due process, right? Due process, equal protection of the law. Now, the Sixth Amendment has due process elements, right? For instance, the portion that I should know my charges, that's part of due process of law. The part that I'm entitled to a fair trial, a public trial, an impartial jury. Those have to do with due process as well. Now, I'm entitled to a speedy trial. I'm entitled to a fair trial. So I'm entitled to have an impartial judge. That's part of due process that's embedded in the Sixth Amendment. But Judge Bonifant has never been a fair judge, right? He's brought his personal bias into this case. He's brought his personal bias into this case. And he's extended this trial. He's violated my right to a speedy trial, right? It's 3 years I haven't had a trial, right? 3 years. The role of the judge has been, that's Judge James Bonifant, to try and abuse his power to either use judicial fiat to say I have a mental illness just because I'm black and I'm Nigerian, or to also, and to try and coerce me to accept the wrongful plea bargain offer from the state attorney's office, which I refused, right? Ab initio, there was fraud. So I, at no point am I obliged or obligated to accept a plea bargain predicated on false charges and illegal conduct, right, from the beginning. So several times the judge blindsided me, and he twice he found me incompetent to stand trial wrongfully, right? Assuming he's a judge. Apart from the fabricated documents from the police, they have state psychologist, Dr. Julie Smith, that they use together to fabricate reports, psychological reports. They coerce psychological reports and fabricates write defamatory and derogatory information uh, against defendants. So this is a racket that they have in Montgomery County, Maryland. This is one of the ways that they've been wrongfully arresting, incarcerating Black Americans and stripping them of their rights. So I got a chance to be able to see these things in Montgomery County, Maryland. Montgomery County, Maryland has only population of Black people is roughly 18%, but they constitute over about 55% of the arrests. More, I'm sure, because the data I searched, I'm sure that's it's understated, right? It's grossly understated, because in the end, the inmates in Maryland state's prisons um, roughly has about 72% black uh, black population. That's black men roughly constitute 72% um, of the inmates in Maryland state prisons. Now, one of the uh, ways that Judge Bonifant has clearly violated my rights and, based on racism is, they offered me an opportunity to go and to volunteer and go and do an evaluation, mental health evaluation on my own. I was living in my home, right? The police can't just come, or anybody, or GDA, where nobody can just come and tell me to go and do a mental health evaluation, right? I'm a grown adult. I'm an independent person. Those are parts, those are my, my dignity rights, my human rights, my dignity, my autonomy, right? It's infringed on. But Maryland apparently once they file charges against you, criminal charges against you, they uh, they abrogate some of your constitutional rights, like your rights to privacy, autonomy with respect to uh, your medical records, right? So one of the things that George Bonifant did that was bizarre in his thinking, right? He does this circular reasoning, right, based on his racism, his prejudice. He goes, well, my refusal to do a mental health evaluation is a sign I have a mental illness. He says these irrational statements in court. These were, well, this is past, in the past tense, right? He would make these irrational statements in court that, well, the fact that you refuse to have a mental health evaluation is a sign you have a mental illness. And this is a judge, graduated from a law school, and he says these irrational things. To me, I'm an educated person. I have a law degree like him. I graduated from a better law school than he did. I graduated from George Washington University Law School. He has a law degree from University of Maryland Law School, right? I have more education than Judge Bonifant. 6 years, 16 years, 16 years, roughly 16 years of university education, right? But Judge Bonifant makes these irrational um, statements in his bid to inveigle me to give up my constitutional rights. There was a statement that I saw Alexander, there was a quote by Alexander Hamilton, I paraphrase. He said, anytime you try and compel someone, right, to give up their rights, the more adamant they are to stick to, to resist you, right? They're trying to use coercion on me, and then they're gaslighting from the beginning. They're gaslighting me, telling me they filed false charges against me. They've defamed me, telling lies about me, right? I'm an upstanding person and I value my reputation, right? I'm a middle-aged person. As of the day I was raided, I was an auditor in the Department of the Navy holding a top secret TSSCI clearance, right? I have 16 years of university education. I don't have to be going into details about my education, but I'd never been arrested. I'd never faced criminal charges. Law-abiding person. And then all of a sudden, I'm in my home. I mean, not in somebody's home. The police comes to raid me based on a false accusation without giving me notice. Well, that's past, but now I'm in courts. And then this judge is making false statements. He would shout at me for a whole year. He would just say, oh, why don't you want to use your medication? Why don't you want to use your medication? When I make a gesture to respond, he says, well, no, you can't talk because your attorney says you can't talk. He doesn't want you to talk. He did this for a whole year, violating my constitutional rights. The man who had impersonated himself, that had made it clear known to the courts, made it known to the authorities, made it known to the attorney that he hired, that he is impersonating himself as my uncle. My mother had made it clear he's not my uncle. My mother went to court in Nigeria that, one, he's not my uncle. Two, he wrote malicious statements against me, all lies. Three, he has no authority to represent my family. I have family. I have an aunt who's a psychiatrist in the state of Maryland. The judge is so racist. That James Bonifant. He's so racist and xenophobic. He's treating um, He's criminalizing mental illness because typically in a humane, civilized society, somebody with a mental illness is not a criminal. You treat them with empathy, with courtesy, with dignity, right? It's not a crime to have a mental illness, right? But in the state of Maryland, they impute false, uh, they mislabel blacks, especially black men, as being mentally ill, and then they criminalize them based on that, lock them up, incarcerate them, lock them up, and coerce them to take medication for illnesses they don't have. They file, and it starts with the false charges that the police files. So under the law, a judge, when they see there's no probable cause, because there was no probable cause at all, it's the judge's duty, responsibility to dismiss the charges. There's no probable cause or there's illegal police conduct, right? None of this existed, right? There's no probable cause, first of all. And then the police perpetrated an illegal act. The police instigated and manufactured a swatting. A swatting is a criminal harassment tactic where a false police report is filed with the emergency services in order to generate an armed police presence, and it ends up in violence. It ends up in a violent action. And this is a pattern that they use in Montgomery County, Maryland. Judge Bonifant also demonstrated racism in not just the defamatory ways he talked to me, but also in the ways he dismissed a black female attorney, my public defender, who told him, no, that I don't have a mental illness, who asked him, what is the purpose of having these ad infinitum evaluations? He dismissed her. He talked to her in in a discourteous manner. While he made false statements, he fabricated evidence, fabricated statements in court against me. He would just tell lies. So this judge, it's astonishing though. Um, it's astonishing what goes on in Montgomery County, Maryland. I started to conduct more research on Montgomery County, and I found out that it was actually a very strong um, the Klan, the Ku Klux Klan, the racist, white extremist, white nationalist organization that's prescribed, right, by the U.S. government, right? There's a Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. They have a strong presence in Montgomery County, Maryland, and they have infiltrated the police departments, Montgomery County Police Departments, right? Many of them are Klan members or former Klan members or affiliated with some white supremacist group. Judge Bonifant, in all his abuses, has been apparently trying to protect the police's wrongful actions, their assaults, their kidnapping, their fabrication of a crime of false charges against me. He's been trying to protect them and possibly some other things. But the thing is, I'm talking about the racist conduct of Judge James Bonifant in Montgomery County. He, in a megalomaniacal way, assumes he's a psychiatrist, and just because I'm black, I'm from Nigeria, I must have a mental illness, right? He dismisses the fact that I'm a highly educated person. I have family supporting my autonomy, my independence. If it were all the stuff that I'm expressing, that I've experienced, if it had happened to a white male, they would have dismissed the charges. The judge would have dismissed the charges because it's a judge's duty to see if there was probable cause. The police had no arrest warrant to come to my home, right? I was in my home. I wasn't living with anybody, so there was nobody who could say, "Well, I was in a fight with them." And all the evidence that I've seen, right, that they've proffered, they're all fabrications. They're all lies. The there's the police, if they're moving around, they're required to have body cam. The police haven't produced a body cam of the 7-hour standoff that they claimed. which would demonstrate they fabricated their statements. Even what we have, right, what's provided shows inconsistencies, shows that they lied in the charge statement. A public defender has said it that they lied. What they claim happened did not occur. So the judge should have dismissed the case. They don't have, it's not even a matter of not even having sufficient evidence to convict, right? Uh, the evidence they provided is if they're fabrications because they're inconsistent statements. That's not what happened. My attorneys have told the judge several times in courts that they're distorted. The distortions, what they claimed happened, did not happen. So Judge Bonifant, in a racist manner and xenophobic manner, helps the state attorney to file and maintain false charges to extort and blackmail minorities, black people, and institutionalize them, give them criminal records or pathologize black men and immigrants. And I found somebody else that was a Hispanic person that had been wrongfully committed by Judge James Bonifant for trespassing. But he was born in America. He's an American citizen. He was in college, and Judge Bonifant wrongfully committed this person for trespassing. Once you refuse to accept their plea bargain, right, then he abuses the system, the competency evaluation. They have this racket with the state psychologist, Dr. Julius Smith, and other psychiatrists as well. They fabricate, they commit medical malpractice, they fabricate reports against minorities, anybody that the judge places before them. They get them wrongfully committed, fabricating medical reports, against, and it's particularly against minorities, black people, and Hispanics to keep them locked away, wrongfully violating their constitutional rights. So it's a human rights violation, and it stems from racism of judges like Judge James Bonifant. I'm going to continue this video and provide more explicit details concerning the racism of Judge James Bonifant. My name is Oluro Timosha. I'll keep you posted.